USA get their first comeback win of the Pochettino era. Soccer is officially coming to Long Island, and we discuss pitches in peril ahead of World Cup 2026. That and more on Wednesday's edition of Morning Kickaround. Hello, you found your way to Morning Kickaround. We cover the world's game happening right here in the United States, dotting the map of the American soccer landscape. My name is Robert Kerr, local soccer guy. To my side, Jason Davis, radio soccer guy. Together, like I said, dotting the map of the American soccer landscape. Plenty to talk about today. How you feeling, Mr. Davis?
I'm okay. I mean, a little less sleep than I normally get because I was up late last night on the East Coast responding to the U.S. men national team winning over Australia last night in Colorado. I did a Best Soccer Show. If you're interested in sort of immediate post-game reaction stuff, go listen to the Best Soccer Show, which should be available as a podcast. It's also on YouTube if you want to see more of this incredible face that I carry around with me every day. But I'm ready. I'm here. I know we've got expansion news. What do we say? Dot the map. That's what we're here for. We're also going to talk about some serious topics like climate change and the World Cup. It's going to be interesting.
Yeah, full show ahead today. Thank you to our brand new members this week. Shout out to Riverside Grove and Ken Garner, who already became MK Ultras this week. For $3.99 a month, you can do so. Get bonus content, priority commenting on these live videos, and access to the Morning Kickaround Discord server. Love to see the intros, people jumping right in to the Discord server. So awesome to see that space becoming a great location for soccer discussion content, and definitely where we're more open conversation than on the social medias. If you'd like to find us on social media, though, at MKickaround across all the platforms, X, Blue Sky, Instagram, TikTok. We are there. And you can also send us a note, morningkickaround@gmail.com, or support us outside of those arenas. We got some specific fundraising goals on coffee.com/morningkickaround. Thank you to everyone who supported the show. And if you can't do so, just tell your friends, family, co-workers, anyone with the slightest interest in United States soccer or the beautiful game in general, hit them up. All right, you ready for the show?
Let's go. Let's do it.
All right, let's hit some long balls here on Wednesday's Morning Kickaround. Getting going the morning after a 2-1 win for the United States men's national team over Australia. Be sure to hit subscribe as we get going here. I got to say, I was thankful that the Australians didn't take over the home field, as is the case many times when the United States play at home. So hopefully there isn't too many of the Australian diaspora to take over a stadium in Colorado, but the stadium looked good. The match didn't start off that well with conceding and losing your star player, but things turned around for Poch's men, didn't they?
Yeah, I mean, obviously, as you mentioned, it was a terrible, frustrating goal to give up. Just a sort of a lack of reaction off the throw in, and good from the Australian to get on the end of it, and maybe Matt Freese could have done slightly better. But I don't know.
The ball bouncing in the penalty area, always a sign of trouble.
Yes, don't let the ball bounce in your own penalty area is pretty much the first rule of defending. I mean, I think you get told that when you're 3 years old. Don't let the ball bounce in the penalty area. And it did, and that was a problem. But as you said, it was more about the reaction. I know that lots being made about the first comeback win under Pochettino. They hadn't won a game where they had conceded first. Obviously, Haji Wright is coming out smelling like roses with both goals. Two very good, confident goal scorers finishes. Remember, he scored a goal in the World Cup like off his shoulder. They kind of bounced around and pinged off of him and went in the net against the Dutch in a game that we ended up losing. In this case, those were finishes from Haji Wright. Christian Roldan was the guy who set them both up, and we'll talk more about him in a couple of minutes. I saw a little bit in the Discord, and I imagine that people in the chat this morning are feeling the same way. is this what positivity feels like? Right? Like, wow, we've got something good going here for the first time, maybe in a very long time. I don't think it was as dire as all that. I think because we are in a no qualifiers era, because we don't have to play meaningful matches for a while, and because you feel like that is a disadvantage for a host team sometimes, I think we're filling that vacuum with negative vibes or potential problems, or like I said, I did the best soccer show last night with Jared Dubois, and in the chat during that show, somebody said there's a possibility that our draw could be. I think he said it was Uruguay, Italy, and Egypt. And I was like, oh God, man, like, can't we just like for a minute be happy that we've got some positive momentum and not think about what the worst case scenario is for the group stage draw? Like, can we just not do that for now? We still have a while to go before the tournament kicks off. So I'm happy with the overall play, right? Against a team you knew was going to be mostly set up in a low block. I think they did fairly well in those situations. There will be talking points out of it, including whether or not Christian Pulisic is actually a benefit on the field sometimes, because people are arguing today that they played better after Pulisic came off. I think you could also talk about the midfield and maybe needing another body in there to sort of ping the ball around rather than be what Christian Pulisic is, which is a player who's always looking to get released, who's always looking for the most part to play forward. You need players who are willing to play forward, but in that kind of mix, what is the balance in the team? Those are talking points today. There's lots of them.
Yeah, sure. Plenty of talking points. And going back to your point of there being an unusual feeling of positivity, I like to call them, and I think I dropped it on Monday, the caveat kings the men's national team can be. It seems like when there's a moment of encouragement or you get excited for the players available for a game, only for there to be some caveat to undermine your justified excitement. Oh, they're playing this game, but it's on a bad surface, or we thought this player was going to play or they didn't, or this, that, and the other thing. But this was a genuine, granted, there's the caveat if it's a friendly. But I wouldn't say, especially in this window, I thought that there was a different air to the games in general, not only the men's national team, but there seems to be a little bit of an amplification of the seriousness level. If you go back to last night, there was some challenges that went in there, and there was some steel and some heart that you don't often see in any friendly, but it's been a long time coming for this men's national team. I mean, Chris Richards, I want to point him out. I know Haji Wright and the Roldan and Pulisic's injury are getting a lot of play, but I thought Chris Richards, while he did get beat for the goal the United States men's national team conceded, when things got chippy and when things got intense, when the team, conceded, he seemed to be a very vocal leader, seemed to be taking a lot of responsibilities on his shoulders, definitely sticking up for his team when Australia was maybe going over the line with their physicality.
Yeah, I think that was a major part of it for Pochettino. And in fact, here's a quote from last night in the postgame that speaks directly what you're talking about. Mauricio Pochettino on forming a team, what type of characteristics you need: good teammates, good people who put the interests of the national team over your own interest, to see the behavior of when you're playing well, when you're not playing well, we take notes. And he talked about this leading into this window, and he talked about it here. And obviously you saw Chris Richards, and Chris Richards himself said that after Pulisic's injury, after he left, and obviously, there was that sequence with James Sands where somehow a yellow card wasn't given, and I don't even think a foul was whistled on what was a pretty.
I think they just brought it back because he was on the ground for a while. I don't think it was a foul at all.
So no foul called, no yellow card given for what looked to be a pretty aggressive challenge. Then there's another moment, I actually caught this and thought it was pretty funny, where James Sands got clattered into again from behind, ends up kind of on his back, sliding away from the challenge. And as he's sliding, and there's a slow motion shot that I caught on the game where he's kind of got his hand up in there like what? Like again, like, you're doing this to me. And Chris Richards came back and fouled pretty aggressively immediately after that. And I'm gonna get the name right here. So D'Agostino, the forward for Australia, is the one who committed the foul on Sands in the first place, and then Chris Richards made sure to stick a foot in and let D'Agostino know, hey, you're not going to get away with that. I think it was a poorly refereed game overall. I think that was a major part of what last night was, that there was not a lot of control when it came to the way that things were happening in terms of fouls and the like. But if that's going to happen, and sometimes you're going to get that, and obviously World Cup games are going to be testy and physical, well, then give it back. Give it as good as you get it. And I think that the United States did last night.
Yeah, that was definitely good to see. And after that foul that you mentioned, Chris Richards, was the replay was as soon as he fouled, he was staring right at the referee, like daring him to give him a yellow card because he'd just had multiple conversations about how the referee had let things go. So he was given the death stare to the referee after that challenge. And I thought it was kind of wild. Imagine if your boss said, we take notes. That's a pretty intimidating and a comment that would make you definitely feel accountable that like all of my actions are being watched and observed. I thought that was pretty good. It wasn't like, the guys are doing great. It was like, we are judging you and taking notes on your reactions to all of this.
Well, all of this is about that accountability thing, right? All of this is about, hey, when you come into camp, this is not a vacation. This is not an opportunity to have dinner with your boys or play some golf. This is about representing your country. And that is a big deal every single time you get called in. And you should never take it for granted that you're going to get called in, whether you've been a 50 cap player or a 3 cap player. Like there's going to be a challenge to get into this team, and we're setting a standard and we're setting an expectation. And I am a sort of rational enough person that I think sometimes that's all a bunch of nonsense, or at least it's all cover, or this talk about sort of intangible things like culture and accountability are sometimes just ways to sort of, make up for the fact that maybe you're not good enough. And again, like coaches like to justify themselves. And sometimes you justify yourself by saying things like, well, we got to fix the culture, or we have a culture of accountability, next man up, and all this, sports history is filled with those things. Like Bill Belichick effectively made a career out of like using that kind of mentality element to sort of push his teams. At least that's the way people see it. Now, you have to be good in other areas, and just a mentality is not going to win you soccer games. But if you have decent talent and they are not reaching their potential, then obviously culture can be a part of how you get them to that higher level. And I don't even care. Like, I don't care what the means are. I want the ends to be good. And if Pochettino believes that this culture change that he's affecting, that he believes he's affecting, if the players buy into it, doesn't matter how tangible, how real it is. It only matters that they believe in it, which in effect makes it real. I know we're getting very philosophical here on a Wednesday morning, Rob, but that's, again, I think sometimes I roll my eyes at some of this stuff, the leadership culture, the phrase, the motto that Pochettino brought to the national team that Henry Bushnell wrote about, this thing that the CEO of Chick-fil-A told him, which is that culture eats strategy for breakfast. And Pochettino bought into this and now is, spreading that gospel to the players, because of course it feeds into that idea. And when you're a national team coach, like what I do like about this is that when you're a national team coach, you have very limited time to impact your team in meaningful soccer ways, right? You're not a club coach drilling your guys on your system and your tactics every day. You're not able to make small or even significant tweaks between games in a week of training because you're going from Manchester United to Manchester City. That's not what this is, right? You are dropping in every so often, in this case right now, every month, and you're getting a look, and it's a different set of guys every time you do it, because that's just the way international football works. Some guys are injured, some guys are unavailable. Maybe you want to see different players. Some guys are out of form. And so what can you carry through? What can be the connecting tissue from one camp to the next when you've got a World Cup on the horizon in America? It's culture. It's yelling about and screaming about and reinforcing this idea that we fight for each other, that there's accountability, that everybody has to show up and give everything they've got or you won't be in this team. And you definitely want to play in a World Cup because you've been dreaming about it since you were 4 years old.
With each camp that goes by, the closer and closer we get to World Cup 2026, the pinnacle of many of these players' careers, no doubt. Who will make the team and depth needed, I think, was put on good display. I think there is starting to be a core of what Poch wants. And then because he's had some random camps where he's been testing depth, see who he could start to rely on. And it seems like we're at about a corner where we're starting to see that take shape. And we mentioned earlier, Christian Pulisic had to leave in the first half. He took a knock after having limited minutes in the first game, but showing some good depth. Diego Luna came in and showed that he can play a role in these types of games.
Yeah, I thought Brendan Aronson was good late in the game as well for what he brought, the energy he brought, and he had an opportunity to set up Luna on a goal that required a good save from the Australian keeper. So there were things there. Obviously, the Pulisic situation is not great. I mean, if we're there's this game did deliver a basket of good and a basket of bad, right?
Sure
And
did, yeah.
the bad included Christian Pulisic having to leave the game half an hour in with what was reported by Pochettino after the match to be a hamstring injury. Now, I think we knew that he was carrying some sort of ankle soreness when he joined the camp. It's partly why he was limited against Ecuador. And Pochettino also talked about after the game how he didn't love the switch of locations for these games. You go from Austin, Texas, where he said, it's hot still and it's a warm weather place. And then you go to altitude where it's a lot colder. And he just said, I think that was probably bad for the players. Again, does the science back up Pochettino on that, Rob? I mean, the hot, cold thing.
I mean, moving and traveling is harder than sitting still and staying somewhere. So, I mean, science be dashed. It's less convenient. It's definitely less convenient.
There is that too. It's not a long flight from Austin to Denver, but there are elements of this that probably weren't to Pochettino's liking with the way the Federation scheduled these games. So Pulisic goes down. Now we will wait and see. Let's all hold our breath because he was in such good form with AC Milan. He's going to go back to Italy to be assessed. My guess is whether hamstrings are tricky, Rob. Hamstrings can be a month and a half, 2 months, whatever, or they can be a couple
nothing
of
or
days.
Everything. Yeah.
That you just don't know with hamstrings. So again, this isn't the ankle, this is the hamstring. And I'm actually be more worried about the hamstring than I would be about the ankle. The ankles heal. Those things can, once the swelling goes down, you're probably okay. In this case, with a hamstring, can you fire up those engines? Can you hit full speed again, which is what Pulisic game is all about. So I think there's concern for me in the short term. This is not a, hey, I'm worried about the World Cup kind of injury, right? This is only now and being in good form and just him flying that American flag when he steps on the field for Milan and helps them challenge for a Scudetto. I would also mention that Anthony Robinson was with this team and did not see the field. No. And that is concerning because he has barely played for Fulham so far this season. And I think there should be, and my friend Jared Dubois said it last night on the Best Soccer Show, there might need to be some concern over whether or not he's going to have a second surgery or something. I mean, you call him into the camp if he's fit and you're going to play him, or you call him into the camp to get a close-up look at whatever's going on there and to really assess what his situation is. And I think I don't want to ring any alarm bells yet. And, I'd like Max Arfsted, but he's a backup and we need Anthony Robinson on the field.
Yeah. So with that in mind, on the opposite side, was Serginho Dest in this team? Was he in this camp?
He was not. He was a healthy absence, a fit absence for Mauricio Pochettino, which might say something as well. Now, and again, we're talking about a player like Dest, who everybody sees as an incredibly talented, skilled player that most of us would put in our starting 11 if we were playing a meaningful game at the World Cup tomorrow. Pochettino didn't call him in, but who he did call in again after adding him to the roster late in September is Christian Roldan, who we mentioned set up to 2 goals. And I want to share a quote that Pochettino made about Christian Roldan. This is Alexander Abnos reporting this on Blue Sky. Pochettino, Christian Roldan is maybe an example if you want to build your perfect player. He has a little bit of everything. And gentlemen, women, ladies and gentlemen, this is confirmation as far as I'm concerned, minus, barring any significant injury to Christian Roldan, that this man will be playing at the World Cup in 2026, or at least on the roster. How much he plays could be still a question, but he will be on the roster. Pochettino sees the dog in Christian Roldan. He sees the spirit, the attitude, the industry, and occasionally Christian Roldan does what he did last night, which was set up 2 goals. One from just a perfect pass as he's falling to the ground to get Haji right through. Beautiful. And the second one,
love that goal.
Just a veteran move, quick restart, seeing Haji making the move, realizing that you can just quickly put the ball down and pop it into space. And Haji Wright, again, posterized an Australian defender, and we get the 2-1 win.
Yeah, I love the opportunistic nature of that second goal. That was just beautiful. That's like my only way of scoring a goal when I play in my own life is you got to be cleverer than someone, catch somebody not paying attention or something like that for me to get in the back. But I know Roldan definitely splits some opinion with the whole like Euro snobbery versus the MLS players, and so some people get in their heads a little bit about Roldan being even picked for camps like this.
He
But
he
after last night's performance, it's pretty hard to argue against him having some sort of a role. He has experience as a pro. He's been in and around the team for a long time. And when it actually came time to perform, he did so. And it wasn't just,
yeah.
invisible contributions, nicking the ball, being in the right place, providing space, or any of that. He did all that plus getting those goal contributions. His pass to set up that first goal, that's one of the nicest looking men's national team goals in recent memory.
It's been a
Like the
while since we had
pass
a goal
and
like
the
that.
finish. I mean,
Yeah.
I don't know if that was a toe poke or just the outside of the top of Haji Wright's right boot for that opener. But wow, what a goal
Yeah,
that was.
great finish. Incredible. Knowing he probably couldn't get it onto his left foot and maybe the angle he wasn't going to be able to get around it to keep it on frame, playing it with hitting it with that right foot, obviously with enough power to beat the keeper. Wonderful finish. Really enjoyed that from Haji Wright. Now look, here's a comment from the chat. MLS haters can kick rocks. I would say, look, there is truth in the fact that any extreme position is probably not going to be completely realistic in its assessment, right? So if you say MLS is terrible, no MLS player should ever be in the national team, I'm going to dismiss their opinion pretty quickly because you're not considering the individual situation of any player who might be useful to the US men's national team and happens to play in MLS. Playing in MLS doesn't make you a bad soccer player, right? And even if you don't believe MLS is one of the best leagues in the world, it's also not true that just because you play in the Bundesliga, you're better than an MLS player, right? The player identification and recruitment process is not perfect. Right? Sometimes circumstances dictate where a player play that are personal or again circumstantial. It's just it happens to be that at this point in a player's life, they're playing in Major League Soccer and not playing in England or Spain or Germany or France or whatever. So nothing is universal. Don't throw a blanket over anything. Now, this isn't to say that MLS should be more represented in the national team. And we do at this point kind of have to just hand our trust over to Mauricio Pochettino and let the man make the choices and believe that his background, his resume, his experience in the game, playing for many clubs in Spain and elsewhere, playing in Argentina, playing for Argentina, coaching at a high level, even at that club and not country, allows him to get a picture of a player and say, I can use that player. And then trust that he's going to take that player and put them in a position to be successful for the U.S. men's national team in whatever way he needs that player to be successful. Are there more skilled players than Christian Roldan in the pool that aren't in this group right now? Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. They're faster players. Are there, I don't know, what are you looking for? Are there, again, better is probably the way most people think about it. Maybe there are. But as we saw with Pochettino's quote, he sees in Roldan a little bit of everything, and that's useful.
Yeah, being able to do all the different things that your coach asks for, or if you're in a tough spot and your coach needs something specific, you have somebody on your bench or in your squad that you can rely on to do a job, fill the need. And on top of like being the workman like nature of the player, getting those assists and almost getting a goal. He wasn't far away from getting the ball in the back of the net himself last night. So interesting to see those comments, and interesting that he made those comments about perfect player, about such a player that gets caught in the middle of those conversations. And to be fair, I mean, trusting in Pochettino's player evaluation, last night was his 20th game, and probably half as many camps, 20 games. So I think there's a little bit of trust needed now of his player evaluation, and not necessarily the most talented 18 or 25 players or whatever you take to a World Cup,
Look,
but
that's not a
making a
national
team.
team.
Yeah,
But
that's
this
what
is
I'm saying. Like being
yeah.
able to have the most useful pieces of players. Obviously, you have to have talented players to accomplish things, but you also have to have utility and
Look,
a balance of hard work and skill, and all of those together. Maybe they all rub off on each other and they combine for talent and skill and hard work and togetherness.
okay. lots of times, right? There are obviously players who are doing it at such a high level on such a regular basis that you can be very sure of their place in the world hierarchy of player rankings, right? We know how good Kylian Mbappe is, for example. And there's no doubt that when France plays, Kylian Mbappe, if he's healthy, is going to be in that team because of how good he is. But there will be positions in that group. There will be other places in that roster where it's a choice between 2 or 3 or 4 players, and the difference between those players is almost impossible to divine, except for the fact that maybe this player's a little better passing, and this player's a little better defending, and this player's a little bit better in the air. And it's up to the coach to decide, well, I need a guy who's good in the air in case, right? For whatever reason, I'm going to bring the guy who's good in the air. He's not as good of a passer as that other guy, but he's better in the air. And that's my choice as the coach to bring that player. That's what we're talking about here, right? We're talking about creating the team based on usable parts. Now, sometimes your parts are, the most important part. Like if you don't have an engine, that thing's not going to go. Well, who's your engine, right? Those players are your top level players. But okay, I got to swap this out, or I got to shift gears or whatever. Here, who can I use that's going to allow me to do that? Right. And I think there's also, again, mentality is a part of this. The culture, Christian Roldan is the perfect culture player for what Mauricio Pochettino is trying to do. And Pochettino would not be the first, and he will definitely not be the last coach to fall in love with a player because of a player's mentality as much as for the player's abilities.
And
That's just
I
how
think we
this
saw
works.
both last night. We saw both last night, ability and
Yeah, look, and would Christian Roldan be the right player in a game against higher ranked opposition? Australia's number 25 in the world. They're going to mostly play on the back foot. You know that going in. Is Roldan the guy that you would play if you're up against France or Argentina or somebody like that? Maybe not. Like maybe that's not the right game for Christian Roldan. But if you have a 26 player roster, you're playing through group stage matches in about a week, and then you might be in knockout phase games where you don't know who you're going to face. Why wouldn't you want a jack of all trades? Why wouldn't you want a midfielder who can defend a little bit, who can pass a little bit, who can run, who can, who's scrappy as hell, who can make the passes we saw him make last night, and is smart enough to play the game as a savvy veteran. And again, who brings leadership qualities as well that are certainly in evidence both with the Seattle Sounders and here with the U.S. men's national team.
So that does it for the October window of international games for the United States men's national team. When back in action, it will be mid-November, November 15th. United States takes on Paraguay, and a few days later take on Uruguay. So just a few weeks until we see maybe the same sort of group come back. To update who will be joining the United States, Mexico, and Canada in the World Cup. 28 of the 48 spots have been secured. Australia, Iran, Japan, Jordan, Korea, Qatar, Saudi Arabia, and Uzbekistan have all now qualified out of the Asian Federation. In Africa, Algeria, Cape Verde, Cote d'Ivoire, Egypt, Ghana, Morocco, Senegal, South Africa, and Tunisia. And in South America, Argentina, Brazil, who lost to Japan in quite a game yesterday, Colombia, Ecuador, Paraguay, Uruguay, and in the Oceania, New Zealand has qualified, and England so far the lone UEFA qualifier. So progressing towards World Cup 2026. The draw is in December, if I recall correctly.
December 5th is the draw. Yeah.
And that's kind of wild that Best Soccer Show listeners already fretting upon the group draw. I mean,
look, the group does have so much to do with how a World Cup goes for anybody, right? Now, the United States, when we go to the World Cup, and we definitely are this time, we didn't get to go in 2018, but when we go, we generally get out of the group. Like in 2006, last time we didn't get out of the group, right? So and it's not to say it's going to be easy or we're definitely getting out. I have to see the draw. I do think there's this sense, though, that you're a pot one team. And generally in the past, that meant you're in a pretty position, or a very good position to get teams in your group that you can beat or collect enough points off of to qualify for the knockout phase. But because it's a 48-team World Cup, and because you're adding 3 more UEFA teams to what was already 13, now it's, I think, 16 UEFA teams, and which they would argue is not enough UEFA teams based on the quality that is there in that confederation. and because of the way the pots work, again, you might end up getting a powerhouse. You may end up getting a team that we think of as one of the elite teams in world football, or again, Egypt. And Egypt doesn't always qualify for the World Cup, but we know what kind of talent has come through Egypt over the years. And I mean, it's not just Mo Salah, but obviously Mo Salah. Like you could end up losing a game 1-0 on a goal from Mo Salah, although it hasn't started so well this season after last year's incredible campaign. Rob, is our man tired? Is he a little gassed over there? Is that what's going on?
I'm honestly at a whole loss as to the whole Liverpool team right now. The balance is not right, I would say, is a fair way to surmise that. And Mo Salah, not necessarily fit and firing, and it's a game of small margins. And, he got slandered for his performance in that last game. Was that against Chelsea? But he finishes one of those, and the whole storyline changes as far as the narrative over there. But we can wait till the weekend to talk about Premier League and Liverpool stuff. But we got a great guest coming up in a few minutes. But until we are joined there, I want to say thank you for joining the chat and for tuning in right now. If you haven't done so yet, join the over 3,600 or so subscribers to Morning Kickaround. Let's keep those numbers going up. Shows your support, shows YouTube that we should be sending more people our way. If you want to step your support of the program up a notch, you become a MK Ultra. $3.99 a month gets you channel membership, early access to videos, bonus content, priority commenting on these live streams, and access to the Morning Kickaround Discord server. So thank you for all the members, subscribers, and thank you for everyone for tuning in and supporting this program as we dot the map of the American soccer landscape. All right. Our guest has joined us, so we are going to talk about climate change and the effect on World Cup 2026 when we come back here on Morning Kickaround. Today's hot topic here on Morning Kickaround: will the 2026 World Cup be the last Summer World Cup? We are now joined by guest Elliot Arthur-Worsop, the founder and director of Football for Future. He wrote about climate change threatening football from World Cup stadiums to grassroots pitches. Welcome on, Elliot, to Morning Kickaround.
I think we're trying to figure out how to get Elliot on here. I know he's in our green room, so as soon as we can figure out the technology of getting him on, let's just make sure his audio and everything works before we throw him on. While we wait for that to work out with Elliot, I will share a little bit of what we wanted to talk to Elliot about, which is the Pitches in Peril report that he and his group worked out. This is obviously about climate change, as you said, Rob. And, you can actually flip through this entire report. It is incredibly detailed, well done, lots of very, I guess, troubling information. I mean, this is one of those things where we know we need to be on top of this. We know we need to be talking about this issue, but is it fun? Not necessarily. I think Elliot's with us. Elliot, are you with us?
I believe I am. My camera's not working, but can you hear my audio?
We can hear you fine. That's all that matters today, I guess, Elliot. Not that we don't want to see your face as well. I'm sure that would be a bonus for the listeners, but it's good to have you here to talk about this report. Thank you for coming on.
No, thanks for having us, guys. Really exciting stuff. We've been working on Pitches in Peril over the last 9 to 12 months, really. A little bit of background on myself. So I'm the founder of Football for Future. We set up the organization about 5 years ago. We're a group of climate experts and sustainability leaders who are also football fans, and we believe in the power of football to make the world a better place, whether we're talking about gender equity, racial justice, food poverty, you name it. And there was a deafening silence in the climate space. So we established Football for Future to sort of like come in there and kick off the conversation and make climate science relatable to the biggest demographic in the world, which is football fans.
one of the biggest things that kind of added a little bit of despair at reading the report was a lot of the projections were 2050 related, but a lot of the football venues for the World Cup 2026 already fell under your excessive heat to play thresholds. I guess with short term, World Cup's happening next year. What can be done, if anything?
Yeah, I mean, absolutely. It was the results were pretty stark. So what we did is we partnered with a climate intelligence organization who provided us all of this data about all of these different types of weather categories, and we can drop a pin anywhere in the world. And we did this for the all of the World Cup host stadiums, and also actually the grassroots pitches where many legends around the world started their careers. We also did the biggest ever fan survey insights into what football fans think about environmental sustainability, and we did the biggest ever activation of professional men's football players talking about climate change as well. But to focus on the actual World Cup host venues for next year, we found that the headline that you guys mentioned is that this will be the last World Cup of its kind in the men's game in North America, simply due to the fact that the next time it would be awarded in North America would be around the year 2050. And the data that we found suggests that it would be impossible to host it in the same way without significant adaptation measures being taken. We've already seen with the last World Cup in Qatar, they actually moved it to the opposite end of the year, which is a significant adaptation measure. We'd see many other things, whether this would be moving the kickoff times to, cooler times of the day. Maybe it would be longer drinks breaks. Maybe it would be more, it could even be the way that the game's played in terms of the intensity that the players are actually able to play football. If it's really hot, we saw this summer with the Club World Cup, the intensity of the games for Premier League players was a lot slower than what they're used to playing. So it also compromises the environment, the entertainment integrity of the game as well from a fan's perspective.
I mean, the era of being able to put on a month-long tournament and expect it to not be overly taxing on not just players, but obviously fans as well, Elliot. I mean, we're talking about the stadiums and how hot it is, and it's hotter on the pitch than it is in the stands, but the people that are coming to the United States for next summer's tournament are going to get a shock as to just how hot it is here. And obviously, heat is just one element of this. Actual weather events can be a factor in all of these things as well. And I know that's part of the report.
Yeah, 100%. We're seeing across extreme heat, across extreme wind and hurricanes and monsoons, rainfall, waterlogged pitches, you name it. There's also, a really important one is wildfires disrupting play as well. This is a really big one. Obviously, we saw in Los Angeles just earlier this year, we saw games being disrupted at every level, even for the national team. I think at the women's, the US national. The US women's national women's team had to move their training camp to Florida in the end, I think it was. And obviously about 4 months prior to that, Florida had been devastated by a crazy hurricane. So you just can't really escape from these new climate realities, no matter what the type of weather is. And football is starting to wake up to this. We saw with the Qatar World Cup, it was the first carbon neutral major tournament, and there's lots of questions about that. We won't go into it now, but all across all across the game, we're seeing the Premier League's now got 2 in-house sustainability leads. Pretty much every club in the Premier League has got sustainability leads. The UEFA did amazing things around the men's Euros last summer. The Bundesliga is doing really cool bits, bringing in sustainability club licensing criteria. Football is really now starting to reckon with climate realities and understanding that it has to take a stand on this issue, simply because football itself is at risk. And once again, like the findings of our report really do lay that quite bare for all to see.
Well, look, I mean, obviously that's great that there's some sort of recognition and some movement in a direction of mitigating some of these problems, from that end of the footballing world, Elliot. But there's also just a question of, are we still kind of in denial about what this will ultimately mean? I mean, you mentioned the Qatari World Cup got moved to the winter. Gianni Infantino was putting breadcrumbs out that the Saudi Arabian World Cup may have to be moved because of heat. And again, why that wasn't a consideration for the American / North American World Cup is it's unclear to me. I mean, we're actually talking not just about heat, but humidity in a lot of America, which can make it a lot worse, even to be outside for extended periods or to engage in physical activity. So I guess from this report, from doing this work, and is it enough? I guess you laid out all those things, Bundesliga making steps, but is it enough?
You really hit the nail on the head with one of the most important questions in the sector. I think one thing that we do actually outline in the report is there's a very big and fundamental difference between environmental sustainability and climate action that is proportionate to the scale of the crisis that we face. And I'll quickly explain that in a little bit more detail. Environmental sustainability is when a football club or a business reduces their carbon and reduces the amount of single-use plastic. That's environmental sustainability. That's important and that's great, but that's not going to save our butts when it comes to the climate crisis. We're actually nearing some pretty critical thresholds and tipping points whereby once we go past them, we will see runaway climate breakdown, climate collapse, ecological collapse, and all of the horrible sort of realities that come with that. And I don't want to go into that now because this is a football podcast, not a science podcast, but once again, that's environmental sustainability. And even if the entire global football industry went carbon zero tomorrow by, I get a magic wand and I get a magic wish and football decarbonizes tomorrow, the global football industry's carbon footprint is only about the same size as Spain's or Portugal or Poland's. So if the carbon emitted from football disappeared, the climate crisis would not be solved. However, what football has the superpower to do and the unique ability compared to anything else in the whole entire world is to inspire change and to drive social change and to raise awareness and kick off conversations and to educate people and to inspire people and change people's attitudes when it comes to environmental sustainability, to take it out of the silo. One very famous professional football player articulately and authentically talking about climate change and saying that I care about the planet would have way more impact than a whole generation of geography teachers could ever have or could ever dream of. That's the reality of it. No social phenomenon is more powerful than football, and that's really where football's superpower is. We need to see action that's proportionate to the scale of the climate crisis that we face, and that's what climate action is. However, whilst environmental sustainability and sustainability strategies at a club, league, or governing body level are important, we do need that's not climate action. That's not actually going to tackle the climate crisis and stop the worst effects of it, if that makes sense.
To use an analogy, and maybe this is a little too dramatic, but people would say this is rearranging the deck chairs on the Titanic on some level, Elliot. But now, that obviously football clubs themselves can't fix the climate problem. We recognize that. As you said, if players speak out, that could have power. We need more of that. Obviously we live in a world where, those who do speak out about climate change are shouted down quite often. I don't want to talk about the politics. This is not a politics podcast either. But, there is a sense to me that based on how FIFA has acted in the past, maybe less so UEFA, but certainly I put them in this category in looking out for their best interest. Individual clubs, clubs like Real Madrid, who maybe don't have a lot of time for the traditions of the game, or are willing to break apart the traditions of the game to benefit them as a club. See the Super League idea, for example. Is there a sense that we're moving in a direction where football just says, okay, we can't do anything about this problem. It's too hot. We're just going to change everything about this. We're going to dislocate our clubs or our tournaments, or we're going to play only in certain places, or we're going to have to, is there a dramatic sort of overhaul of the traditions of the game to make the game work within a world where climate change is a major problem? And maybe you can't have 100,000 people or 50,000 people in a stadium because of the heat.
Yeah, I mean, but the choices are, like, looking at the science, the reality is that football stops or it has to adapt. We're going to have to adapt the game to the changing world around us. And I think the interesting thing about life is that the only thing that is constant and the only thing that is guaranteed is change. And football is far from perfect, right? Like, football will continue to change in different ways, whether it's, we're seeing more teams coming into the World Cup. We're now seeing you don't have to have two people kicking the ball to start the game. We're starting to see all of these different rules. VAR are coming in. Like, it's dynamic and it's fluid, and football can be so much better in so many ways for so many people associated with it, from a social impact perspective, from a financial sustainability perspective, from a governance perspective, and also from an environmental sustainability perspective. And it's not just about becoming more sustainable. You're quite right. It's also about how can the game become more resilient to these extreme weather events that are going to become more intense, and they're going to become more frequent. And I think there's just the beautiful thing about football is, whilst, you know, sometimes climate change can be quite politicized, and extreme weather events can feel quite abstract, all of a sudden you can really get people's imaginations calibrated when we start talking about the realities of, you know, the things that we love being disrupted. It really paints a picture. It makes it a lot more relatable. And if we can, you know, acknowledge the fact that, okay, now football can't be played in these conditions because of these weather events, people take a step back, and you can't deny climate change when you're seeing games being called off and you're seeing players standing up and using their voices to talk about it. So it's a really, really interesting space. And yeah, you guys, I don't know if you've ever been in these conversations much, but you're making some really great points. And that might be because you guys growing up in the US, you are actually a lot more used to climate extremes compared to a lot of people living over here in Europe.
Yeah, there's something to be said for this is normalized for us in a way it's not for a lot of the world, and I don't know that that gives us, you know, any particular, you know, we don't get to say more because we've experienced it, but it does. I do think with it that sense of how climate can impact your ability to just do the thing you love, and we're talking about professional football here, but just for kids to go outside and play is quite an exercise sometimes.
Yeah, that's a good point, Elliot, about us being a little desensitized to it. Because just in the chat here, our viewers listing all the different facts of humidity and heat and otherwise in the various locations across the country that they live in and they deal with. And here, I mean, we've had just locally where I'm in Michigan, which is more northerly, which a lot of these highlighted cities are. And there's games postponed or delayed for, you know, intense thunderstorms, smoke from wildfires, and various other, tornado threats and whatnot. And then even over the summer with the Club World Cup, there was, games interrupted for extreme thunderstorms.
Games interrupted for thunderstorms. Obviously, the American, MLS plays through the summer, which, you know, we can talk about the wisdom of that. And they're considering a switch of calendar, which may be a reaction to climate change as much as it is anything else. But thunderstorms interrupt games all the time in our top level professional league. And we kind of just get used to it and go, oh, 3 hours of a delay. It's the fact of life now.
So, but one of the questions I wanted to get to before we let you go, Elliot, was that you highlighted Miami, Houston, Monterey, and Dallas top the list of most vulnerable stadiums. 14 of 16 of next year's venues play in thresholds for excessive heat and flood potential. I think the elephant in the room is obviously money, corporate interest, and viewership, trying to get as many viewers for these as possible. Do you have any knowledge or thoughts of whether FIFA and the World Cup organizers will put games later here, which is an inconvenient viewing time for the Europeans, or will they just kind of battle through and play through the super excessive afternoon heat for those more convenient viewing times?
Yeah, no, that's a really good point. And just to double down on that fact, so it's Miami, Houston, Monterey, and Dallas experiencing all of them between 100 and 160 days of where football becomes unplayable because it's too hot. And that's not taken into consideration flooding, wind, and drought, which would be compounded threats, which would make those numbers even higher. We're talking about a third of the year you just simply can't play football because of the weather, and by 2050. So this is, you know, hopefully in all of our lifetimes. In terms of how will the games be adapted, and how are FIFA going to have to respond to that to mitigate risks of just sort of like disasters leading up to the World Cup and rearranged fixtures close to the kickoffs? I have been hearing talks about kickoffs happening for us in the UK. My mates have been sending into the WhatsApp chats, you know, 1 a.m. kickoffs, like 1:30 a.m. kickoffs. Some people are actually quite excited about it. I remember when I was in Japan and Korea a few years ago, it was like 8 in the morning. Yeah. So I guess for those beer drinking English football fans, it's exciting.
Don't give them
Elliot, that's why one of my theories about the popularity of the Premier League in the United States is that people like to get up in the morning and drink beer. That gives them an excuse to do so. So yeah, I can see that.
Yeah, it's hilarious. I guess it's the truth of football fandom. Not for everyone, but it is incredibly popular. But yeah, the games are going to be adapted. There's going to be water breaks, longer water breaks, maybe longer half times, maybe rearranged kickoffs. Maybe we're going to see in Qatar, they had air conditioning inside stadiums, which is also like, you use this air conditioning, it uses more energy, it uses more fossil fuel, it contributes to the bigger problem, and it's just like really putting a band-aid over a much bigger problem.
I recommend anyone tuning in now or watching this later on to check out Pitches in Peril, How Climate Change is Threatening Football from World Cup Stadiums to Grassroots Pitches. Elliot Arthur-Worsop, thank you for joining us today. For those interested beyond checking out the report, what's the next update or piece of work that people might be able to find?
Hell yeah, I love that. So definitely check out Pitches in Peril, Football for Future. We say it's a report, but it's really beautiful. It feels as though you're scrolling through Instagram and the algorithm's just top notch. But I would say, yeah, we've got some really exciting plans around adaptation funds. We want to raise more than $10 million to be distributed to grassroots football communities across the host nations as part of the environmental legacy of the tournament. We've got some really exciting conversations going on. We're really looking to partner with people across the North American soccer scene to help us bring this to life and make this fund happen. We've got a research partnership with Columbia University on this and understanding what adaptation funds can look like and how they can be most impactful. And no environmental legacy can be more impressive than protecting the future of football. So definitely, if this is something that interests you, get in touch, follow us. We'd love to hear from you. And yeah, thanks a lot to you guys for having us. It's been a pleasure to be here.
Thank you, Elliot Arthur-Worsop, founder and director of Football for Future. Thank you so much for joining us and sharing with us here on Morning Kickaround.
Thank you, guys, and sorry about the camera.
No, we got the pretty pictures of the report, and we got you talking about it. So we that was excellent. Thank you very much, Ellie.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you guys for getting in the chat. Some conversation about some heat and adverse weather conditions across the country, as well as definitely people chiming in on their favorite Saturday morning football and drinking combinations there in the chat. Always easy to get into the sauce when the football's on TV. But thank you so much to Elliot for joining us this morning. We have one more segment to go. Stick around as we dig into some more soccer under construction here on Morning Kickaround. Soccer under construction here on Morning Kickaround as we continue to dot the map. My name is Robert Kerr. Next to me, Jason Davis. Yesterday, another new soccer team or soccer market was announced. This time, it is MLS Next Pro, the Island FC, bringing professional soccer to Long Island, New York. How about that?
Yeah, some pictures here from their announcement. This actually, a tease of this announcement landed in our Morning Kickaround inbox, and I took it to the Discord and said, does anybody know what's going on here? Because they weren't giving out any details. And then subsequently, somebody said something about Long Island. I was like, oh, that's what this is. This Definitely is what's going on here. So here we have the official announcement. No logo yet, just the Island FC, which... that's a choice. I will say that is a choice. Will it catch? Will it be a thing? Will people be attracted to this? Will Long Islanders be like, yes, the Island FC, this represents me? They're going to play in Uniondale, which is in Nassau County. So, a little bit further west than the bulk of Long Island, but basically where the people are, Rob. So they're, again, I'm not being a Long Islander. I can't speak too much to the geography of this, but I do know, I do know that there are millions of people who live on Long Island or within a couple of miles of Uniondale. So this could be something for them.
My hot take on this, just my gut reaction when I saw this, it does reflect the self-importance of New Yorkers and East Coasters that the island would represent that one specific island. There's millions of islands across the world and in the United States, there's, islands dot our maps. And the island, what could it be? Of course, Long Island, huge population. And I think the most notable part, MLS Next Pro is the league that they decided to enter. Some folks disappointed that they won't be joining the USL world and, dotting the map in that capacity, joining the future pro rel setup that might be coming here in the future, and kind of furthers and adds more fuel to the possible soccer wars we're under right now. And kind of is this part of the kind of land grab that's going on in the lower leagues of American soccer?
Yeah, I mean, you could argue that. I mean, it certainly makes some sense that, MLS was like, we got to scramble something on Long Island because we don't want to lose out on that market to USL as they get their promotion relegation stuff up and going. This is a lower cost proposition. Even if you just talk about, even if you kind of ignore whatever the expansion fee is, running the club is going to be a lower cost at MLS Next Pro than it would be in USL. And if you are choosing to enter USL, and we're going to get to a USL club that's been announced as well here in a second, you are choosing to potentially engage with an integrated pyramid within USL that might require you to up your investment significantly should you be promoted or should you win promotion. And of course, if you're putting a team on the field, you should want to win, which could mean promotion. So you're choosing a path that could be significant in terms of cost, right? You kind of have to plan that out. When we talked to Ozark United and got into their situation, they talked about, it was a little bit about that funding element of it. Now, there was no details. We didn't find out who the backers are all the way down the list or any of that, but they have to think ahead to the potential of costs going up dramatically. That's not the case for MLS Next Pro. You know exactly what league you're playing in. Now, there may be new teams at it that would actually make some shorter trips for you, but you already kind of know the landscape. Chris is saying this is a huge loss for USL HQ. And this is an interesting part of this conversation, Rob. Does this block USL from Long Island? Obviously, Uniondale building a stadium for this team means they won't be building a stadium for a USL team. And if Uniondale was willing to do that, if this town in Nassau County was willing to do this, that you could argue that's a miss on USL's part. But it's not like Long Island couldn't support another team that's trying to draw 5, 6, 8, 10,000 people out to soccer matches.
Yeah, some of the towns that we're talking about are way smaller than this. And, can a team in Arkansas hold more than one team? Can a team in Boise, Idaho hold more than one team? We said it. This island holds 5 million people. So you think, if the dot on the map gets so dense on the American soccer landscape that, yes, it seems like there should be enough people, but is there enough space for venue?
Let me clarify that obviously when we talk about, you said 5 million people. Long Island has 8 million people. The population of Long Island is 8 million people, but that also includes Brooklyn, right? So Brooklyn is on Long Island. It's across the river from New York. So it's part of New York City. So, but you can draw people who are willing to drive to Uniondale from all over the place. Now, if we got to get to the other team here because we're running out of time this morning, but it is interesting. They're calling themselves the Island FC. I'm going to be fascinated by this logo whenever they drop it. But we also have the Town FC, which is out in California. The MLS Next Pro outfit for the San Jose Earthquakes is called the Town. And we had this one that you put this up already, waiting for the City FC, of course. What else are we gonna get?
Chris Sau, the Town, the Island, Crown Legacy,
the Berg. Can we get the Berg FC? There's got to be some place called Something'sburg that's willing to put a team in town and call it the Berg FC. Like that's got to be a thing. I'm ready for that. The Villages. There is a team called the Villages because there's a place called the Villages. That's a very good one from producer Jenny. All right, so this is what's happening on Long Island. We can argue, we can talk, we can debate whether this is the right move to go into MLS Next Pro over USL. Obviously, if there's money behind this, you can't sort of wish it went differently. These people believe that their better investment is in MLS Next Pro and not USL. And tough for me to say they're wrong without knowing exactly what's going on there in Uniondale. But what else do we got here, Rob?
Oh, we have a new USL League 1 team announced. I don't think we talked about it over the in the last episode, but anchored in glory, pride of the city. Pride of the city is Port Saint Lucie in the Treasure Coast there in Florida, set to kick off in 2027 in USL-1. We talked a bit last week in brief about the various soccer projects popping up both in USL and MLS Next Pro in Florida, and we can add Port St. Lucie to the list. And this one, we do have a badge and a tagline. What do you think of these ones?
So, look, this is not terrible by any stretch of the imagination. Obviously, leaning into sort of a pirate theme. What I told you before the show, and I maintain this, it kind of looks like the sign for a putt-putt golf course you might visit on vacation.
On the side of the road in Daytona.
But that's not to say that it's necessarily bad. They mentioned the color scheme of this as being red, aquamarine, red marine, black, and white. I don't see any red there. But these are distinctive team colors. They pay homage to the Treasure Coast, a name that was coined after salvagers recovered treasure from a Spanish fleet that was wrecked in 1715. So again, pirates are part of the story here on the coast of Florida.
And we talk about
no problems with this, really. And again, they're not aiming for the moon, although this is the rendering of the stadium they want to build there in Port St. Lucie. So this and look, we see what do we see over there, Rob? What would we call this kind of development? Would we call this a soccer stadium, or would we call this something else?
I think that this is called a mixed use development here. We have soccer, live entertainment, looks like apartments stacked up, and probably some retail there in the foreground.
Can I also say something? Can I point out?
You're going to talk about the graphic design on this?
Well, I grabbed this from, it says City of Port St. Lucie. I grabbed it from a news outlet there. I'm guessing they superimposed it over what looks to be just a picture of a park or some streets there in Florida, because it's got palm trees and everything. Anyway, it doesn't matter. That's neither here nor there. This is going to be a USL League 1 team. We're adding 7 in 2026. There's already a couple lined up for 2027. The map gets dotted. The dot gets mapped, and the map gets dotted. That's what I was trying to say there. Again, like, we're in this phase where it seems as though plenty of people want to invest in soccer. We can't have the bar too high to prevent people who have an interest in doing this, but we have to be careful that we're not just letting the riffraff through the door. So if the city is involved, if Port St. Lucie is very invested in building this, if they see this as a benefit to their community, who am I to tell them that they're wrong? So let's get these teams going. Let's get some of these travel costs down for these teams that are going all over the country, because that's always been a major problem for why teams collapse, Rob, is it just costs too much to operate the team. So here we go. We talked about Florida on Monday, didn't we? And that was before Friday. It was before Port St. Lucie was announced. We talked about the Space Coast team, which is the Brevard County team that got mentioned in the chat. This is from our man, Mike Thomas. This plan seems way more fleshed out than the project in Brevard. And that project doesn't have a name yet. I don't think they have a date yet. I haven't seen renderings. That's just the idea. Although there are some Orlando figures, including former Orlando City head coach Adrian Heath, involved in that. So I am intrigued by it, but this does seem further along.
This Port St. Lucie, we should clarify that these announcements, some of them are saying they've come into an agreement to explore a possibility, but this one actually says in the USL press release that Port St. Lucie Sports Club has actually been awarded a franchise. So this is a thing that has been awarded. It's not just like an agreement to explore like some other cities have been.
This does feel like something that has been baked a little bit more than a lot of this other stuff that we've heard, right? So, and we've covered this. You mentioned the town in Colorado. I think it's like Firestone, Colorado, which is northern Colorado. There's a bunch of cities kind of squeezed up there. One of them is, several of them are cities that have good soccer communities. It's a place where a bunch of U.S. women's national team players are from. So there's soccer there. And we were like, what? Firestone, Colorado. But again, it's just this sense that you are engaged in a conversation about finding a way to build a stadium. And if we kind of give you the franchise agreement and outline what it takes to run a team, all you got to do is go find somebody to back the club. And maybe there is a local businessman or family or something like, or company that wants to get involved in this, not just because soccer's fun, and maybe not because soccer makes money, because most of these teams don't, but because it kind of has those ancillary benefits of tying you to the community. Again, lots of this has to do with, I get my hands on some real estate. I get to build an apartment building and some shops to go with the soccer stadium, and kind of the idea is an everybody wins kind of mix of factors. So I hope all of this is real, right? I don't wish for any of this to fail. I do think that, again, with Port St. Lucie, we do have something that comes out of the oven looking like we could enjoy it, as opposed to some of these that are like, oh, that's still some ingredients in a bowl right now.
Yeah, fingers crossed that all these, get online and are fully functional, sustaining clubs that we see on the map for a long time in the future. One thing from a lingering show that we talked about last week that's kind of been sticking in my craw, we didn't talk about this before, Jason, is the Santa Barbara story. It's been just lingering in the back of my head, and we're talking about the deferment of Santa Barbara Sky. We're supposed to start the championship last year, got kicked down to 2027. What's been bothering me is the not refunding everyone's deposits and having people sign up to have it returned to them and just kicking their deposits down to 2027. And I saw some comments, and it's really been sticking in my craw. That does seem pretty scammy, and Santa Barbara probably should return money for people who deposited for 2026, right?
Yeah. That doesn't sound good. It's really difficult. I'm a person who wants to kind of turn over every story and everything, every move, and say, okay, is there some sort of rational explanation for this? But when you're dealing with people's money and you haven't delivered on your promise, you shouldn't be keeping their cash in lockdown. That's not a thing that makes, not only is it just unfair to those people, not only is it just the customer deserves their money back if you haven't given them what they paid for, it's also bad for your relationships with the community. Why is anybody going to, who hasn't already put down a deposit, if not only you've been delaying your launch, but you haven't refunded the money? Why would they trust you with their money? Even if you say, well, we're going to be playing games in 6 months, don't worry, 100%. We got the team, we got a coach. I would still be hesitant. I would still take a wait and see approach to that, which then leads to now you're undermining your business from the very beginning. So I think we have to have some very, very serious concerns about Santa Barbara right now. Since we are throwing into the pot, I will add another one. This is an image that was included with the Island FC's release, their press release, and on the website, they announced the Island FC. I'm just going to beg teams again to avoid the incredible temptation to run to AI to create these images. Yeah. Because even if you can say, well, what does it hurt for people to see what it might look like? It everybody knows this is fake. Your stadium doesn't exist yet. You haven't. And if you just even look a little bit at this thing, it starts to fall apart. These people are as Mike says, a lot of nubs for hands in this one. Stop publishing any of this stuff. If you can create a perfect AI image where all the spelling is correct and everything looks natural and people have fully formed limbs, fine, whatever, I guess. But this is not a good look for these clubs. Stop posting AI images when you announce your team, when you plan your stadium. Stop it right now.
Yeah, it's an itch that they just have to scratch, it seems like, because this is becoming pretty routine. And I feel like if you're putting millions of dollars and years of effort into it, just like resist the urge to pull the trigger on the AI stuff. Like either be more creative for imagery to come with your release, or have the self-control to not put that out there.
The juice is not worth the squeeze. You got to be thinking about, what do I get out of putting this out there? And what you don't get people going, oh, look at that. That looks like so much fun. I'm very excited for the Island FC. You might get one person to do that. What you get is Morning Kickaround and other people who pay attention pulling up this image and going, oh my God, what are you doing here? What is this?
All for
Why are we
Island.
doing this? Like, why draw something? Like, actually have somebody draw something. Your shortcut here is hurting you, not helping you. You're saving money, but you're making yourself look ridiculous. There's a hand in there that just does not look right. I
Yeah,
think
the
even
lady on the left is having a hard time. She's got like a hand coming out of her elbow, and the tagline on the shirts doesn't match each other either.
yeah, it doesn't look good. It says all for island, but that one says all for the island. And then even the island, even the scarf that he's holding up, which does not look good. That's not how scarves hang in your hands when you hold them up. It says the island F period C comma. Why? Again. Oh, I'm sorry. I got my Thomases mixed up. Not Mike Thomas, regular Thomas. I do this all the time. Shout out to Thomas. Thank you, Thomas, for correcting me on that. That's also a besties situation. We've got confused in the past with Thomas. Anyway, the point is, this looks terrible. Don't do it. That's the bottom line.
And hopefully it is just one little bump on the way to an amazing soccer club that we look forward to seeing the progress of. Thank you, everyone, for tuning in today. Thank you to our brand new member. If you didn't get a shout just now, Ronald Ice the third. Thank you so much for becoming the brand new MK Ultra. Glad to get one in the show because we did have a pretty good show today. We got to talk a men's national team win, positive note for the national team. And then we got to talk about some real stuff, not necessarily quite as positive, but we got to talk about climate change and the impact it may have.
We learned today, Rob, we learned something today. I think that's the takeaway of this show. And also clubs learned, hopefully, not to put AI images in anything. Don't use AI images. Don't.
Or at least not AI so obvious that you'll get caught.
Don't use AI. Just don't use AI because then you won't fall into this trap. And again, whether or not you think it's like evocative of some experience your fans are going to have, trust me, people are going to look at this and go, what the hell is that? Where's that guy's arm? Why is the spelling all wrong? And even if AI gets perfect, Rob, even if AI becomes perfect at this, I would still advise not to do it. But let's cross that bridge when we get there.
We shall cross that bridge. Thank you to Ron and anyone else considering becoming an MK Ultra. We'll see you in the Morning Kickaround Discord server. And we got some great stuff ahead on Friday. We're going to talk Corpus Christi and a number of other new teams. And I'm sure some news is inevitably going to pop up between now and then. So until Friday, everybody, please enjoy your soccer.